Hey, what's going on? This is the Body Punch Podcast, and my name is Naz. The anticipation of a fight after a hiatus like the UFC has gone on makes that fight so much more special, and it gets everybody excited for it. It's funny because when the UFC first started and MMA was still in its infancy, fights didn't happen as regular. It would be maybe once a month. And in some organizations, it would be once every couple months. All I'm trying to say is, what we have going on right now, with all of these fights happening back to back, we shouldn't take it for granted because things like this happen. Now, I think we do need breaks every once in a while because it just grows our hunger to watch fights. I talked about it in a previous podcast, but what the UFC has done by still giving us a little bit of normality with having all of their fights still happen is really incredible. It makes it seem like nothing has really changed. Now we got this amazing fight this weekend featuring Max Holloway and Calvin Kattar. Max Holloway regarded as the best featherweight of all time. But he is coming off a really tough split decision loss to Alexander Volkanovski. Most people saying that Max actually won that fight. And then, even before that, he had another loss, a unanimous decision loss to Alexander Volkanovski. So this is one of those things that it's a test. Yes, you have been facing the best of the best, but now we got to see what level you're at. I don't think Max Holloway has lost any of his luster or his greatness. I just think that styles make the fight. Alexander Volkanovski and his team have been looking at Max Holloway's fights for a very long time. Even though Max is relatively young, for the amount of time that he has been in the cage, there's a lot of footage about him. I think this is what happens when you fight for a long time. Yes, some of your skills in the octagon and your reflexes and strength and cardio might be lost. But I think when you have amazing coaches like we have in the UFC that can, parse through all of the footage and the fights a fighter has been through, that can really be a factor as well. Because like I said, styles make the fights. And if you fight a certain style when you know that the other person is going to do these certain things, and there's so much footage about that one fighter like Max Holloway, then you can come up with a game plan, a really good game plan. Now, Max is facing Calvin Kattar, who's coming off a really tough fight with Dan Ige. I remember watching that fight and being surprised of the contest and how tough and gritty that fight was. But that's just the fight that Kattar likes. He likes those tough fights. He's not scared. He's not going to back down. And he's always in it just for that kind of fight. Those brutal wars. Calvin Kattar, with all of the interviews that we're watching and all of the interviews and stuff that we've seen in the past, he's a person that lets his game do the talking. He's a person that won't talk as much as the other fighters, but he's one of the dark horses in the division. Now, if Kattar can defeat Max Holloway, that's going to bump him up in competition. That's going to bring him to the top of the food chain. We did see him KO Jeremy Stevens. But before that, we saw him lose to unanimous decision to Zabit. Now, in that fight, a lot of people said that if that fight wasn't 3 rounds and if it was 5, then Kattar would have won. And Zabit is regarded as one of the fighters who, if he had fights in 2020, then could have fought for the belt. And in some people's eyes, could have won that belt. And now, if we're saying, if we're doing the math and saying that Calvin Kattar would have beat Zabit, then we have a real contender. But we can't play those kind of games. And that's why we have this fight with Max Holloway and Calvin Kattar. This is a great way to come back from a hiatus, but this is also a great way to showcase MMA on ABC. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm Canadian, so I don't have the same kind of idea of ABC, if you will. I'm somewhat familiar with it, but it does have a lot of history when it comes to boxing. This is the first time an MMA promotion is coming on to ABC. And it's just a big deal in general because you're back on network television. And I think a lot of the foreign fans outside of America don't understand how big of a deal this is. Now, talking to a bunch of people and watching a bunch of interviews, we learn how special this is. The same channel that Muhammad Ali fought and grew to the mega superstar that he became and the icon. So this is a massive deal. This is big. But I think we all need to pump the brakes a little bit on what this actually is. This is just a way to get back on network television. Because a lot of people are saying that the way the UFC is streaming and on all of these different platforms online, that's the way to get to the younger generation. But I don't think it matters. I mean, either way, you're getting these amazing fights on free TV. I think that the younger generation will come to that as well. And I think even the older generation now will start watching these fights. I think what ends up happening is that people reminisce and they think about boxing and the heyday of boxing. And then they see this special sport, which is MMA, and they see all this amazing stuff that's happening in it. And all of these characters who are the fighters in this sport. When people see that, they start getting drawn to the sport. I think that's what's going to happen. And I think this is why the ABC deal is really important. Because it will gather everybody together. It will turn into a family event again. Because that's how it's like outside of America. When you got fights on TSN in Canada, which is, I would say, the ESPN equivalent, and you have free fights on there, it turns into a family event. Everybody gets together. Everybody watches the fights. Even people that don't know anything about fighting or MMA or the UFC or who these fighters are, it doesn't matter. I always say this, but if you have a crowd together and they don't know anything about any sport, they don't know the rules of basketball, they don't know the rules of football, they don't know the rules of soccer, and you put them into a crowd, a stadium, and you start playing basketball or one of these big sports in front of them, guess what's going to happen? They're not going to understand right away because it's not in our human nature. Our human nature does have fighting, though. If you have two people fighting in front of a crowd that doesn't know anything about any sport, they will still understand what's going on in fighting. This could be boxing, this could be jiu-jitsu, this could be MMA, this could be kickboxing. But we all know what the primary objective is and what the primary goal is and what that actually looks like. We've all seen it a million times, either online or even in front of us. But people know fighting. And I think that's what the ABC deal is. It's just to bring everybody into MMA. It's to bring everybody closer to the UFC. It's to create that family event again in the United States. But in Canada, we already have that. In the UK, we have that. We get free fights over here on TSN. And when you're flipping through the channels, or if you're one of those people that just leaves the sports channel on, and you see the UFC or any mixed martial arts, you just kind of start watching it. It becomes its own event. I think this is a massive deal for the UFC. I don't think that this is going to harm the UFC in any way. But we got to see what the structure of this deal is. We're getting this fight, but how many of the fights are going to be on ABC? What else is going to go on there? But aside from that, this fight with Max Holloway and Calvin Kattar is going to be something special. It's going to bring a great crowd. And it's going to be a teaching moment for a lot of the new fans that come, who are just, mind you, flipping through the channels or just have ABC on normally. They'll be able to learn about Max Holloway and the illustrious past that he's had with being such a dominant champion. They're going to learn about Calvin Kattar and all of the great fights that he's had. It's going to be an amazing moment for MMA. And as MMA fans, this all happens to us. but we're all in our own kind of bubble. We all kind of want to stick to that bubble. And when we share this with other people and they don't understand, and we're watching whatever sportscaster on some random TV show and they're mispronouncing names and they don't understand the real fights, I don't think we should be attacking those people as much. I don't think we should be attacking them at all. They're trying to learn and they're bringing it to a wider audience. So let's take a look at Max Holloway's past fights. So like I said, at the beginning of the podcast, we had 2 fights with Alexander Volkanovski. The first one was a unanimous decision loss in Vegas. And then the second one was a split decision loss in Abu Dhabi. I want to talk about the one in Abu Dhabi real quick. I mentioned this, but I think that having the knowledge of going to Abu Dhabi and, fighting there and taking the flight and doing all that kind of stuff is a big deal on its own. It's one of the hurdles that you've already crossed mentally. You know what it's going to take. You know what works for you. You know what doesn't work for you. And the other thing is that Max Holloway in his last fight said that he never got to train with his training partners. A lot of people were thinking that he was telling a lie or something. No matter what it is, he has now confirmed that he's had a full training camp, a proper training camp, which is also a big deal on its own. So he's done the flight before. He has done the time change and all that kind of stuff over there. He knows what his body is going to go through. He's experienced enough now. I think that's a massive deal. I think that's a big deal. And then before those 2 fights, we saw him fight Frankie Edgar. July 27th, 2019. Unanimous decision win. I mean, that was a good win for him. But then before that, we saw a loss to Dustin Poirier. But it was at 155. At the time, people thought that Max Holloway could take his winning ways to the 155-pound division. Some people were kind of dubbing him the Khabib conqueror, the person that could take on Khabib. But we all saw what happened. Dustin Poirier put it on him, the person that was more experienced at that weight division, and Dustin ended up getting the interim lightweight championship of the world. And then the last one I want to talk about was the fight against Brian Ortega. Dr. Stoppage, he was putting it on Brian Ortega, using his boxing, using that grit, determination, all that kind of stuff that he's well known for, and really figuring out his pacing. You saw Max Holloway use his pace as a weapon in that fight. It was like when he was driving a car, he was getting onto the highway, pressing the gas, getting off the highway, letting go at some points, but he kept a steady pace and really put it on Brian Ortega. It was almost a vintage performance in the way that he's not going to knock you out. He's going to hit you with the volume. And that's what's going to hurt you the most. And like I said, Dr. Stoppage Brian Ortega was not going down in that fight. Let's talk about Calvin Kattar's record. Calvin Kattar's last fight was with Dan Ige, like I mentioned before. It was also in Abu Dhabi. And that fight, so all of the things that I mentioned about Max Holloway flying and all that kind of stuff, that also applies to Dan Ige. I mean, Calvin Kattar. I mean, it does apply to Dan Ige now too, but Calvin Kattar has the knowledge and has all of that stuff that I mentioned before. So that's why I think both of these guys are really ready for this fight. So before that, we saw him knocking out Jeremy Stephens. It was in the second round. I mean, that was a big test for Calvin Kattar. Jeremy Stephens is no joke. And to not get scared of the moment, it shows me a lot for this fight as well, because Max Holloway is a massive name in the featherweight division. And for Calvin Kattar to step into that fight against Jeremy Stephens and take him on after Stephens missed weight and they had to do a catchweight fight at 150 really shows you what this guy is made out of. Not scared of the moment. Before that, we saw him fight Zabit. And at the end of the fight in the third round, people thought that Calvin Kattar was coming back. And if he had 2 more rounds, he could have beat him. That shows me that this guy has great cardio. He has great pacing as well, just like Max. That's why this fight is so exciting. And it shouldn't be slept on. Because they mesh together well. It's going to be, these guys will go at it in the middle of the ring. And they'll have the pacing to go all 5 rounds. And that Zabit fight really showed us. And it also showed us that Calvin Kattar is not someone that should be looked down upon. He's someone that should be at the top of the division, should be at the top of the game. So that's why this fight is so exciting. Just looking at the past fights that they've had, looking at the styles that they use, man, this is going to be crazy. So let's take a look at the other fights on this Fight Night card. First of all, I just wanted to mention that this thing starts at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which on a Saturday, I cannot complain about. We'll be staying up all night, so that's going to be great. But I wonder how it's going to affect the fighters. I mean, this time switch, so you dial in on one time zone. You know, you go to Vegas, you stay there for a bit, you dial in on that time zone, but then you go to Abu Dhabi once, and then you fight at one, you know, the fight start at whatever time. And now you're going back and you're going to fight at a different time. I guess you still learned a lot from your previous visit, but now it's switched up again. So I wonder how the fighters are going to deal with that. So we have the Max Holloway fight and Calvin Kattar fight that we talked about. After that, one of the most interesting fights, Carlos Condit versus Matt Brown. It's I think it's been in years in the making. This is going to be an action-packed fight. And like a lot of people have mentioned, for this one to be on the ABC card, where we're going to assume that we're going to have a lot more eyeballs on it, this is a great fight to have. because they might not be in their prime, but we all know that they're going to go at it. And that's what the fans are going to look forward to. And that's what they're going to talk about. It reminds me of the Matt Bonner and Forrest Griffin fight. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be at that level. We don't know. I can't say anything about that. But the thing is that when Griffin and Bonner went at it, it's not like they were the elite of the elite. The reason why we got all that hype and we saw the amount of fanfare for that fight was they didn't care and they left it all in that octagon. If these guys do it, it could have similar results. Now, that fight was, I think it's in the Hall of Fame. It should be in the Hall of Fame. But I think it has some similarities to it if these guys go at it. So after that, I think the Ponzinibbio fight is interesting. We got Buckley coming back. Now, his last fight, he was really trying to take that dude's head off. Jordan Wright was doing a really good job, I think, at the beginning in the first round. But I think that was due to the fact that Buckley was throwing all of his power, all of it, in every single punch that he threw. He was trying to live up to the hype that he created by that spinning back kick. I think we all assumed that would happen. But now he's got to correct himself. Because if he keeps doing that, loading up on his punches and all that kind of stuff, it's going to catch up to him. It's going to happen eventually. He is a strategic fighter. He's a smart guy. He knows how to strategically beat someone. And I think if he brings that mixed with his power, then we have a real dangerous fighter here. But this guy's got a big name now, which is due to the fact of his impressive knockout. I think a lot of the new fans will remember him from social media and expect something amazing. But you can see that just by naming off a couple of these fights, you can see that this card is built for this ABC deal. We got a lot of exciting fights on here. We have Justin in the heavyweight division. I can't pronounce the last name. Tafa. Probably wrong at that, but who cares? You know who I'm talking about. But he is an exciting fighter. That heavyweight division in the prelims. So you can see that this fight card is built for this ABC kind of venture that they're going on. So I think overall this is a fun way to start off the 3-fight card week, or whatever you want to call it, the 3-fight cards, ending with Conor McGregor, and then also having that Neil Magny fight. So this is a great way to start it. This is a great way to come back. And this is an amazing way to start the year 2021. That says all the writings of remembering this whole week, You know, we're going to talk about it for a little while now, I think. Remember when everybody went to Fight Island and we saw Conor McGregor there? We're seeing footage and photos of Conor McGregor. I believe he's on Fight Island now because Dustin Poirier is there too. That's confirmed. So it's going to be exciting the coming week of fighting. I mean, this week is going to be exciting. Next week is going to be even more exciting. Just to see what happens when you get such a mega star like Conor McGregor on Fight Island. It's going to be great to see. And it's going to be great to talk about it. Thank you for taking the time and listening to this podcast. I really appreciate it. If you guys could like, subscribe, hit the bell notification, and on the different podcast platforms, can you please give 5 stars? That'd be really appreciated. Thank you. Again, thank you for taking the time. My name is Naz. This has been the Body Punch Podcast. Bye.